I have to do a clean take of that in a second, but
that's okay.
I can't exactly just leave that F-bomb in there, but I'm going
to... No. I mean, you could bleep it.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
It's a last-minute episode. We can get a little wild. We can get a little crazy.
Listen, I was kind of considering making this one an explicit episode just for funsies. So... Hi friends, welcome back to Not Again, the podcast that brings college-level analysis to preschool-level content. I'm one of your hosts, Rebecca.
And I'm Adele.
Yep, we got Adele again. I mean, lucky you,
Hi.
Right? Yeah. Hi, thanks for doing this.
Yes, lucky for everybody.
Yes. Well, as you may have seen on Twitter, Alan got the second vaccine, which is awesome, but he was a little under the weather. We actually had a whole thing planned for recording, and we had the boys at the nannies, and we were going to do it, and then he was just bedridden. So, and he was like, I can do it. And I was like, this is not like a war thing that you have to fight through or whatever. We'll just think of something. And then Professor Batty flew in and rescued us.
That's right. I've only had one COVID shot, so I'm good to go.
Yeah, so for me, my arm hurt like the very devil. Moving it, I was crying out in pain, which I don't often do.
No.
I have a pretty decent pain tolerance. Like, it was that bad, but I never felt sick, so I counted myself lucky because I was preparing myself to essentially get the flu, and that didn't happen. But Alan got some arm pain and then a little bit sick. He is feeling better, but he's watching the kids right now, so we can record a kind of last-minute episode. So with that being said, today we are talking about The Prince of Egypt, a DreamWorks film from 1,000 years ago.
It's their first ever one. Their first movie.
Their first... You're kidding.
No,
like,
DreamWorks is their first movie.
Their first animation, or just like their first...
This is DreamWorks' first movie, period.
They decided to make a biblical story their entrance onto the scene?
Yes, there is a backstory to that.
All right, let's hear
it. If you want to get into it. So Jeffrey Katzenberg did previously work at Disney and was one of the founders of DreamWorks. Apparently, he wanted to make a movie like this for a long time, and he kept pitching the idea internally at Disney and kept getting shot down.
Disney would never have done a biblical story. Although they did, though. Like, in Fantasia 2000, they did Noah's Ark, so fuck them. I
mean, the story of Jeffrey Katzenberg, DreamWorks founding is very much a fuck you to Disney.
So is all Fox animation with Bluth, so...
Yes,
exactly. So many people wanted to say fuck you to Disney, so let's do it.
Yes.
Let's do the explicit episode.
Sure, okay.
I'm just going to title it the explicit episode so that people really understand. All right, let's go to town. And we're going to talk about sex slaves. And the Bible is fucked up anyway. So
the Bible is fucked up.
Oh, so right. Before you continue, because obviously, DreamWorks, this is all fascinating to me. For the folks at home, if you're listening, you might have chosen to skip this, in which case you're not listening. So who am I talking to right now? If you don't want to hear curse words come from my lips, I can do this now because I quit my fucking job. So whatever. My students find me just whatever. They're not going to be my students soon. What are they going to do? Fire me? I'd welcome it. Spoiler alert for The Prince of Egypt. Yay! I remembered that. I'm so proud of myself. And we are going to get blasphemous as fuck up in this bitch right here. Do you plan to blaspheme, or are you going to keep it?
Sure, why not? I'm also an atheist, so I'm not attached to pleasantries of polite religious discourse.
Okay, and you have a very different religious upbringing from me, so this will be interesting as well. And Pims is giving us the go-ahead, so I guess we're good to go.
Yes, a thumbs up from Pims.
So here's the thing. We are going to get into blasphemy. We're going to talk about atheism. I'm going to say some things about God that you might not like, so if that's not your thing... That being said, I'm still proud to call myself Jewish. That's going to come up. I am a Jewish atheist, which means that I consider myself culturally Jewish. There is possibly a debate. I feel like I've heard tell of a debate about whether Judaism is really a culture or religion or both. I'm not sure, but I feel like it is what it needs to be for the individual, as is any faith. Mm-hmm. I think faith is very malleable. So I consider myself culturally Jewish. I enjoy the tenets that are get together with your family and celebrate these holidays and tell stories and eat food. I like that. I just don't believe in God. So, DreamWorks. Yes. Oh, I just wanted to say that while we were chatting about what we should talk about today, I want to let the listening audience know that you abbreviated Prince of Egypt to POE, and I looked at it and I went, Poe! So
Poe the panda.
we're talking about Poe again, even though I think probably
Yes.
Poe is spelled just P-O when
Yes.
it's a panda. But still, I think it's kind of funny that we're talking about Poe again.
It is cute, and I can in fact loop this back to Kung Fu Panda extremely quickly. So
well, you could do that
don't
with any
test me.
conversation.
Pims has the water bottle, and
Yes,
he says,
the squirt bottle for sure. And
Yeah.
but this is DreamWorks. I just realized it's actually it's the same production company, isn't it? Yeah, DreamWorks did Kung Fu Panda. That's interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
so this was basically like Katzenberg's like dream project, his dream work, if you will.
Yes, exactly. So he was trying to get this done at Disney, and they said no. And then there was a little bit of sort of like office politics that happened at the top of DreamWorks, where there was the expectation that Jeffrey Katzenberg was going to take over. I don't know if it was CEO or one of the big roles at the top, and he was denied that promotion. That was what kind of caused him to split off. He made DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg and that other guy's name, David Geffen. So they founded DreamWorks, and then Jeffy Katzenberg poached several of the top animation staff from Disney, and one of the really well-known animators kind of in that tussle with DreamWorks forming initially was James Baxter, who is, as far as animators go, I'm trying to think if I know of a more famous American animator. But he worked on Prince of Egypt. He also worked on Kung Fu Panda. So he's done a lot of things for DreamWorks over the years. He also worked on Steven Universe and Adventure Time. So that's kind of how DreamWorks was founded. They did this movie first. It did moderately
interestingly
well at the
enough,
box office.
they did Joseph Technicolor Dreamcoat thing too, right?
I don't know. I have not seen that one.
Well, I haven't seen it, but I believe that was a follow-up kind of movie. I don't think it did as well by any means, but it is technically a prequel to the story of Exodus, so I find it funny that they did it in that order. I'll check it. I'll look it up, but I think they did.
I'm looking at the Wikipedia right now.
Yeah.
Live fact checking here on the podcast.
Yeah, we
Yes,
do that
they
all the
did,
time because I'm so bad at I just say things and then hope they're true. Like, bad idea.
Yeah. But you were right. They did Joseph the King of Dreams.
Right.
In the year 2000.
I love the story of Joseph because it's so indicative of the times. Like, he had all these brothers and they were jealous of the attention that his father was getting or giving him. And so they dug a hole and trapped him in it. And then some slavers came by and they were like, perfect, we'll sell him into slavery. And it's like, thanks, bro. So we haven't even gotten to my notes yet. So we should probably move on. But yeah, so
Sure
DreamWorks, this was DreamWorks' first movie. And it was, I think it was quite successful, honestly. And he won an Oscar for the song, right?
Yes, it did okay.
Made its money back. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I like it. I'm going to start off saying this. For the faults that it has, which every movie has faults, right? I like it. I think it's gorgeous on top of anything else. Like, at the very least, the animation and the music are to die for, with the exception of that one song that the comic relief priests sing.
Yeah.
But, like, there's always one stinker, So
Can't win them all.
in every soundtrack, there's one where you're just like, I'll skip that one. But yeah, so so I want to get out of the way the kind of, it's not anti-Semitism, I guess, but when we last watched this movie as a group, we watched it for Passover because this is the story of Passover, and we watched it, I think, last year for Passover 2. Not Passover 2 the sequel, but like Passover as well. There we go. Passover 2 the sequel would be wild. We discussed how they seemed to be very carefully avoiding making this seem like a Jewish story. And while I recognize, as we just said, that the Old Testament is part of the Bible, this story is incredibly significant to the Jewish religion, to the point where there's an 8-night holiday about it every year, and Moses has become symbolic of Judaism in a way that Jesus, like, they're not equivalent in any way, but people are like, well, we don't have Secret Santa, so let's do Mystery Moses, and they don't have Jesus, but they kind of have, like, Moses, yeah, like
I've
Moses.
never heard that, but I love this idea, honestly.
Well, I heard it from a little cousin of mine, so apparently Mystery
Very
Moses
cute.
is a thing. We needed the alliteration, I guess,
Yeah.
And so basically it's a huge thing to Jewish people. And it's a story of the Jewish people finding freedom after years of slavery. And yet, they, as Heather and I were discussing, they seem to have made it a Sunday school movie, if that makes sense, where people in church would feel more comfortable showing it than people in a synagogue.
Yes. And that's exactly how I saw the movie the first time, was that I saw it in Sunday school.
Yeah.
Quite literally. And I loved it at the time when I was a kid, mostly because I loved animated movies.
Yeah, well, who doesn't? If you don't love animated movies, you're a monster, I've decided.
Agreed. But yeah, that's how I saw it. And there, I will say, in like the Christian religion, outside of Catholicism, I can't really speak to Catholic experiences, but in the Methodist church that I was in, there was a lot of discussion about like Jews in the sense of like Jesus is the king of the Jews. And so that confused me for a very long time as a child.
Yeah. You were the first person who ever told me that term existed.
Yes. And so like people like would talk about Jesus as this Jewish figure, but the Jews are not that, we don't need to focus on them too hard. But their struggle is also a little bit our struggle, was always the vibe. And I don't, as an adult looking back on that, it makes me much, much more uncomfortable. As a kid, I was mostly just confused of like, isn't that its own thing? Like, what? Why is this different? Why do they have a different situation?
You should not be questioning. Like, you must have been a very difficult kid to have in a religious household.
Yes.
Because you're really not supposed to question.
Yeah. Thankfully, I was never severely punished for that kind of stuff. I kind of knew where the line was.
Sure.
Of like, I can bother my Sunday school teacher just enough that they're not going to talk to my parents about this. Or I can talk to my parents in a way, like I remember I would ask my dad things in 2002. I would be like, Dad, do you think dinosaurs were real? Because of course, the whole Christian idea of like the earth is very young.
Yes.
As opposed to the scientific ideas of the earth being very old.
One of which you can prove, and one of which is just told in stories. But
Exactly. So that I would like say things like that.
You were a smart child.
Gave me the teenage, like, I'm being a little bit inflammatory here, but not to the point where I'll be punished for it.
Sure. I remember the moment when I began to question if there was a God. I was in the car. I don't remember where we were going, but I was in the car, and I was in this old gray minivan that we had when I was younger, and I just realized that the concept of some dude sitting in the sky and like watching over us was ridiculous. Like, it's just been too ridiculous for me to grasp. Like, I was like this, and I looked up at my mom and who was driving, and I was like, "Hey Mom, does God exist?" And she just she just sighed and went like, "I never wanted to influence you one way or the other. It's up to you. Like, you decide."
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, my mom's a peach. But so I decided right then and there that I probably didn't believe in God. It's just not logical. And I know that religion explained a lot of things back then that science can explain now, so we don't need it anymore for explanations of like why the sun rises and why rain happens and all that. So, not for me. And I mean, people have been to space now. And when they went to space, they didn't like wave hi to heaven on their way to the moon or whatever, so that's why Hellbound, like heaven and hell, is actually like kind of an alternate dimension sort of thing.
Oh, I see. In your book, right?
That's
cool.
in my book that's coming out whenever Heather Sinclair allows me to release it. So Heather is an editor, and she typically doesn't do young adult novels, but for me, obviously, because she's my best friend, she agreed to do it. It's a birthday present. And so she says, not to get too far into it, but basically, I know that Hellbound could never be published as it is through the traditional routes for a lot of reasons that I will get into whenever I eventually make my YouTube video about it. So my idea was to clean up the version I had and self-publish it, but she said if we're going to do that, we might as well do it right. So that's why I Twitch streamed my writing of the prologue yesterday, and I might Twitch stream again today or tomorrow when I feel like doing more. So anyway, that's my religious stuff. So anyway, let's move on to the actual movie. Oh no, we haven't even finished talking about talking about the right. So here are the pieces of evidence I have pulled just to get out of the way to kind of show that they're trying to kind of circumvent the Jewish influence on this story and the Jewish relevance to this story. First of all, there's some text at the very beginning of the movie, kind of acknowledging and apologizing for the fact that they definitely took some artistic liberty with the story. For instance, Ramses was Moses' uncle, not his brother, but daddy issues makes for a great villain, you know. And also, of course, the connection between brothers is more emotional in a lot of cases. And not that people can't have emotional connections to their uncle. I'm talking specifically like story-wise.
Yes, it hits a lot harder that they're peers.
Yes. And so, yeah, sorry to cut you off, but I'm just going to plow on through this so we can actually get to the movie.
Yeah, no problem.
So they say things like, they called it the cornerstone of faith for millions of people worldwide. Just kind of like, hey, it's part of people's faith, right? And which is fine because it's true. But then it says the biblical story of Moses can be found in the book of Exodus. So specifically calls it a biblical story. And then as far as the cast, we have Jeff Goldblum playing Aaron, a very perverted version of him, adulterated, I should say, and he's not perverted. He's not like reaching up girls' skirts and stuff. I'm talking about it's an adulterated version of Aaron, which I'll get into later. And Martin Short, I believe, is Jewish. He plays one of the comedic side priest dudes. And then, as you pointed out as well, the woman who plays Yocheved, which is Moses' mother, is an Israeli woman. She was born in Tel Aviv. And that's great. I mean, Yocheved is a very important character, but she's in and out in like 30 seconds as well. And so it's kind of almost like, hey, we threw this in for you. Like, be appeased by this. But Moses, and not only Moses, but our God, like the God of the Israelites, Val Kilmer. Like, I understand making Ralph Fiennes and Patrick Stewart the Egyptians because apparently we're trained to believe that people with British accents are either incredibly knowledgeable if they're selling us stuff on an infomercial or evil if they're in a movie. Like, those are the two things that we do with British accents.
Honestly, I find since we're talking about the voice cast, I find this movie, it feels worse to me than Kung Fu Panda does. I know we had that discussion of like white people voicing these characters that are in China. I don't know why this movie in particular, I don't know if it's because fewer of the cast are in any way related to like the character, so to speak.
Well, Kung Fu Panda is a talking animal movie, you know what I mean? So it's a little bit detached from the reality.
Yes, and to have, like Patrick Stewart, he does a great job, but to have him take the role of the Pharaoh, like it just feels really bad.
And then Danny Glover, whom I love,
bad.
Yeah, he plays Jethro, the high priest of Midian, who is a Jewish figure as well. And it's like, so it's an interesting thing because on one hand, this movie gets huge points for acknowledging that nobody in the story of Exodus or anywhere in the Bible was white. And I love that. I love that they were people of color because Egypt is in Africa. And the Israelites are in the Middle East, right? So they get huge points for that. And then at the same time, they cast almost exclusively white voice actors and almost exclusively non-Jewish voice actors. So it's like they got all these points and then kind of lost them again. Like it's hard to reconcile.
They do a really great job visually in terms of, you know, it has the look of, you know, Egyptian people, of Jewish people, like the clothes feel period accurate, the architecture feels accurate, the setting and everything feels very well researched.
Not to mention the animation. I love the way that they seem to take influence from hieroglyphics a little bit in order to create those characters, and I thought that was just a beautiful choice with the kind of slightly high and wide eyes, because the hieroglyphics always have the eyes a little too high up on the head. It's a really great aesthetic.
I think it looks beautiful, yeah.
So they did a great job with that.
Aside from that, yes, like once you get away from the stellar visuals and you kind of peel back the layers, it does feel slightly phony to an extent. Of like they're really going for this authentic thing. Like you said, they open the movie with these quotes. They end the movie with quotes from the Bible, from the Quran, from the Torah, and it's just kind of like, yeah, they didn't quite stick the landing.
Val Kilmer. Yeah,
exactly.
So, not that he didn't do a good job. It's not about the ability of the voice actor. It's that there are good Jewish voice actors. There are good African-American voice actors. Whatever, there are good Chinese voice actors, wherever you happen to be, right? Good white voice actors exist. but good voice actors who belong to those communities and populations also exist. You know, like I said, I'm happy to hear Danny Glover really anytime. Ever since Angels in the Outfield, I've had a big kind of like dad crush on Danny Glover, if that makes sense, where it's like I want him to be my dad. Sorry, Dad, you're not listening. I don't think you know how to work podcasts. But if you are listening, it's a more, you know, in awe of him thing. But yeah, so the voice cast, I would have liked maybe, you know, I love Jeff Goldblum, but like, could we maybe get a Jewish guy playing Moses at the very least? Could we get more people of color and stuff like that?
Yeah.
And then when we move on, we also, throughout the movie, have the use of Hebrew. So Yocheved sings in Hebrew for a bit with her beautiful song. Every song, again, almost every song, I guess, is beautiful. The score is gorgeous. That opening score gives me goosebumps every time. Ghost bumps as well,
Yes,
I guess.
it's very good.
Ghost bumps. It's when your goosebumps turn invisible. But they're still there and you can feel them. So there's Hebrew there. They sing the Micha Mocha later when they're leaving Egypt, which is a Hebrew prayer that like I sang in temple. I'll be damned if I know what it means, but like it's a prayer. Like I'll look it up. I'll do the fact checking thing. I meant to do that before I recorded, but whatever. And then they also do, as we explained to you and Martin, the lies, which are such a Jewish thing to sing. Like I basically pointed people to the Fiddler on the Roof thing where he did like "di-di-di-di-di-di." Like we just make random noises during our prayers. I don't know why, but
it feels good.
Yeah,
it looks like it feels really good.
Yeah. So let's see here. Micha Mocha meaning the song of the sea. Oh, that's pretty. It's like a poem thing. Jewish prayer books recited daily. Yep, I know. But like, it's just a poem. Why? I mean, it sounds pretty. Oh, okay. So it's like, it's what they supposedly sang after crossing the Red Sea, which makes sense because that's what they sang. That's good research then that they made it.
Yes, that would make sense that they're going to cross the sea. So
but it's a Jewish prayer. Okay, so anyway, the point is that they call them, anytime they refer to them as not slaves, they refer to them as the Hebrews. Like the word Jewish never once comes up in this movie. So they call them the Hebrews and they call them slaves. And so that I wanted to get that last bit out of the way. They clearly have a lot of Jewish influence in here. They know it's a Jewish story, and yet they seem very loath to admit it. But also, this baby is definitely dead, I wrote. Remember when she was Moses in the river and just literally everything, like hippos and alligators. No, alligators or crocodiles?
I love it.
Which one's in the Nile?
Since we brought that part up. Yeah, they're crocodiles in the
Nile. Crocodile, Nile, got it.
Hippos are also in the Nile, I'm pretty sure.
Sure.
A lot of Nile animals.
Yeah.
Nile is very big. So.
And boats. Yes. The point is, I think God was supposed to be watching over him or something, but it just, you know.
Exactly. And what I can say, what I love about this movie, and this movie, Tarzan, the Disney movie, also has some of this animation technique. I kind of wish that we would go back to this a little bit, but there are sections that are 3D modeled that have 2D painted drawings that are like the skin of the 3D model if you're trying to think about it and trying to visualize it.
Well, believe it or not, I said in my note, okay, that's enough. Have Adele talk about the fantastic animation. So this is the list of stuff that I listed as like fantastic animation examples. So we have the water in the Nile, especially in the very beginning when Moses is in the basket. The burning bush.
The basket is what is a 3D object. So they animated the basket moving, and then they animated everything else around it in the 2D.
Oh, yeah.
To give it it's like you could think of it as like cheating, like the winking of like it's cheating. So we don't have to draw this basket in a million different perspectives and like use up somebody's animation talent doing something that's mundane.
Well, speaking of Bluth, we have to talk about something with regards to what you just said. But really quickly, I just want to get through the list, and then you can talk about whatever you want to, basically. So we have the water in the basket, great. I also said the burning bush, the river turning to blood, the angel of death, my favorite scene, the parting of the Red Sea, Leviathan. We're going to talk about the word Leviathan because it doesn't actually mean giant shark thing, but it kind of took on that meaning. And then we already talked about that. Perfect. So that's my list. And then also when you said 3D with 2D animation, it made me think of Anastasia. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I have, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So here's my thing with Anastasia. It is so historically inaccurate, and somebody once pointed out how ridiculous it is that we romanticize this one chick's story when, like, we would be freaked out and angry if that happened to literally any other dead young girl figure. Like, imagine if Anne Frank had been remade into a love story by a Disney-esque, you know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, that's true. That is really weird that it's the romanticism. Like, her body was found, man. It's not a mystery. Anyway, I understand that Anastasia is as historically accurate as literally anything I say about history, but I watched the movie first when I was a kid, and kids don't know that, and I loved it. I think the voice acting is garbage, but at least Meg Ryan's is, but I love Anastasia, and I still watch it to this day. But the music box in Anastasia is 3D. They used a lot of 3D in Anastasia, honestly, but it looks horrible. It is not seamless. Like, you can tell that it is a 2D image interacting with a 3D image, and honestly, it's like almost like the Uncanny Valley. It's very jarring. It pulls me out of it. I don't like that. With the Prince of Egypt, I would not have been able to tell, like, what's the 3D object. Yeah, I mean, like, I can tell that something's going on. You know what I mean? Like, I know they use techniques and stuff, but it's not as jarring to me. Maybe because there's a lot of movement, a lot of background.
Interesting.
But I don't see it as being as, not egregious, because they're trying something new, good for them, right? Just I guess to use the word again, jarring. But yeah, so that's what I was thinking of, and now you can talk about whatever you want to. Let's learn about animation.
So the sequences that stand out to me that are 3D objects, the basket in the river. The basket is a 3D object that they've kind of skinned it with this texture that makes it look like a basket. And when they have the chariot racing, the chariots themselves are that same kind of 3D object. They animate that in space moving. And then on top of that is when they kind of put the characters of Moses and Ramses kind of in the chariots. The horses were two-dimensional.
Yes, the horses definitely were. And the horses were also dead. Dead. Like, just rest in peace, Moses and Ramses. Everybody's dead. This sequence is too unbelievable. My suspension of disbelief could not accommodate it, especially when they go down the... not rafters, but the
big scaffolding.
The scaffolding, thank you. When they drive horses and chariots down scaffolding, I'm like, dead. They're just dead. But yeah, so the chariot, the physical, like, vehicle part was a 3D model, and then they had the 2D characters riding in it. And that takes skill.
If you have the Blu-ray version of this movie, like I do, of course, they have a behind the scenes where you can actually see, they show like the shot progression as they're making it.
I'm going to come out and visit you so I can see that. I love behind the scenes. I love behind the scenes. Anyway, go on.
So that is something that there's kind of like a competition between different studios of like who can do this right, both as a way that it saves time, it saves like animation effort so that we can have people devoted to doing the character animation instead of having to do animation of these objects.
Oh, okay.
Tarzan, again, has a lot of this, all the vine surfing that Tarzan is doing. Those vines are all three-dimensional objects that have been painted on top of.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. Yes. And Tarzan's another one I like, even though if you think about it logically for a second, like, Jane, of all the Disney female love interests, Jane probably has it the worst, I think. Like, just imagine having your period in the jungle. Like, Tarzan does not know about that, you know. He learned how to romance a woman from gorillas. This isn't going to end well. So poor thing. But I still actually really like Tarzan because I like Jane. I like Minnie Driver, and I like the way that she does the acting, and I like the character being precocious and beautiful and all that stuff. So, but I did not know about the 3D animation in that. I think it's a little more apparent. Funnily enough, The Rescuers Down Under is the first time that Disney tried to use any kind of 3D animation in their 2D stories, and it's so funny that they wasted it on like a shitty sequel for like a movie nobody remembered or asked for a sequel to. I remembered it, of course, because we own basically every movie on VHS. We had the whole collection. But it's just kind of funny that like that. Oh, maybe that's why they did it. Actually, is they were like, we're going to try this out on a movie that's probably not going to be that successful anyway.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Don't try it on the one you think is going to be a banger. Try it on the one that you think is going to be a flop.
You gotta practice before you get to Tarzan.
The first pancake. That was, you throw it out. Okay, fair enough. So Tarzan had that 3D animation, and again, I I would not have known that. I knew that there was some fun techniques in Prince of Egypt for sure. That's why I wanted to ask you about them, but I wouldn't have known about Tarzan, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I think that stuff is so fun. And what I think is really interesting is like Disney and DreamWorks have gone away from that. DreamWorks, like we talked about with Kung Fu Panda, they do have some 2D animated segments, but it's not as integrated. It's very much like, and here's a 2D scene that we're going to have.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie, it's very much when there's 3D that's happening, it's integrated with the main story throughout the scenes that those objects are needed. But what I find really interesting is that in the anime industry, there is a return to this kind of, we have a lot of 2-dimensional elements and we have 3-dimensional elements to kind of help smooth over the production so that we can save some money here by, we have to have these characters walking. So instead of paying somebody to over and over and over again, you're just going to draw this protagonist who has a very complicated design just walking in a straight line. We'll just have a 3D model of that character, and then we can animate that in a walk cycle that we can just kind of stick where we need in an episode. So as, kind of more Western animation has moved away from that, we're seeing, different animation industries are moving back towards that kind of technology. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of becoming our animation episode more than Prince of Egypt, but I think Prince of Egypt... Look, Prince of Egypt is a great jumping off point for talking about this, though, because it was at a time period where, technology was changing, the art style is changing. Yeah. I was just, while you were talking, I was listening for sure, but, while you were talking, I was also wondering for a second if DreamWorks just fully moved away from 2D animation. They did The Prince of Egypt and then Joseph, and now I'm thinking of the films that I know from them, and they're all computer animated.
Right. They released Prince of Egypt. 1998 was the initial release of The Prince of Egypt.
Yep. I probably saw it in theaters then.
Shrek came after that.
Yes.
Wildly popular, mega success after 9/11. America needed this movie in a very strange way. I feel like I
wonder why it was so...
The context of people... it's a good movie, but I think that the context of the cultural explosion of Shrek was that it was a fun thing for Americans to attach themselves to right after 9/11.
No, I was doing some Googling. Pims was letting me do it.
They did.
But yes, they did Spirit.
Spirit?
Yeah.
Yes,
Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron. Mm-hmm. Spirit Stallion of the Cinnamon.
And
Shrek came out in 2001. Oh, I saw Sinbad when I was Googling if Prince of Egypt was streaming anywhere. And I just I've never seen that movie, but I feel like you and I should watch it together and do another episode one down the line about it. Because it's what is even Sinbad? I remember seeing advertisements, trailers for it, and they were like, we have Catherine Zeta-Jones, and we have this person. And I'm like, isn't Sinbad that weird comic who has the fun pants? What are you talking No. Anyway, so they did do some 2D animation. It's kind of funny. The 9/11 thing bolstering our need for Shrek is also the reason that Donnie Darko tanked. So 9/11 did some interesting things to certain movies.
It was a very strange time in movies, and I think that the timing is a part of Shrek's success.
Well, I mean, Shrek is iconic at this point, but I think that makes a lot of sense. We needed to laugh, kind of thing, and then Donnie Darko just had the very bad luck of being the plane accident part of it being integral to the plot. It was like, nope, don't want to see that. So
what I can say about DreamWorks in terms of 2D animation, they do a lot of 2D animated television.
Oh yes, that's true. Yeah.
So a lot of their movies have skewed towards 3 dimensions.
I kind of forget that they do television. That's why. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Yep. They have smaller budgets and smaller teams, but DreamWorks is a much, much larger company at this point. So they do a lot of stuff. I think,
unfortunately, I've encountered some of their off-brand stuff because of Warren, including their Rescue Riders. That's DreamWorks, I think. DreamWorks has made a lot of How to Train Your Dragon spin-off shows and stuff like that.
Yes.
And
Kung Fu Panda has a show as well.
Yes, I just saw that because we got a free trial of Noggin, whatever that is, on Amazon Prime, so that Warren could watch some of his favorite shows. One of which, I forgot to tease this, I have seen enough of now, and I think I got a fan request to cover, to do a surprise for Alan, which was supposed to be this week, but he was sick. So next week, Alan is going to be surprised with the topic. I've come up with some fun stuff and activities, but it's a very popular show. And what's really funny is I can't remember. My brain is this slow. Like, I really have to go back through Twitter and do some Twitter archaeology, because I'm 99% sure that this is what our one fan asked for, but it might have been a different, very popular kids show, which we're also going to cover at some point. So, because Warren likes both of them, so I have to check. But next week, I will not be revealing what we're doing because it's a surprise. But yes, we were talking about animation and got off track on just talking about DreamWorks and Shrek and Donnie Darko. And yeah, we've kind of gotten away from my notes, but you were talking about just DreamWorks doing 2D for TV.
They're still in the 2D game.
Yeah, so they're still in there.
I will say that Disney also is when it comes to TV as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I have not seen any of the Disney, the more modern stuff, but they have 2D seems to be the stuck to TV.
Well, it must be cheaper, right, to do 2D animation? Or less time consuming? I don't know. Because 2D animation is still done on computers now, right? So it's almost like...
I mean, do you want me to soapbox really quick about this?
Oh, I didn't know there was a soapbox. Oh, I'm curious now. Please tell me.
My animation soapbox, I really don't know how to articulate this very well, but when I think most audiences think of animation, they think of every single step in the process as being animating. Whereas... in reality, the step of animating something is a much smaller piece of the production. It takes a long time, and it takes a lot of effort, but the way that it works is in the shortest, quickest, hobbyist, understandingest of the animation process. You have somebody who writes a script, you have somebody who draws up the storyboards, which is not animated. Yeah,
storyboard artists are like, it's their own, it's a job unto itself. You are the storyboard artist.
Exactly. So you create the storyboards off the script that kind of show in what you would think of as like a more chopped up sequence of like, here's where the camera is pointing at these characters, here's how the camera's going to move or pan, or here's what the character's biggest possible actions in a scene are. The animation comes after this portion, and this is where people get a little bit confused. Most of the animation process of actually drawing all of the individual drawings that will be filmed or scanned is done on paper with pencil still. So a lot of it is done...
We're talking about 2D animation specifically?
Yes. Okay. Yes, 2D animation specifically. It's a whole different thing when we're talking about... like,
yeah, because 3D animation requires creating basically like maquettes or puppets within the computer, right? Yes. And then 2D animation... Yes. So 2D animation still exists in a physical format first. And you're saying it would be more time-consuming and not so cheap then?
Yeah, so most of it is still done. I would bet on it, not being an industry insider, but most 2D animation is still done on paper. A lot of it is done in South Korea and a couple of other Asian countries. So you have, like for DreamWorks, if I'm going to imagine that I work at DreamWorks on She-Ra and the Princess of Power, you have the writing team in America, in Glendale, you have the storyboard artists and the directors in America. They finish up the storyboards, they have all of their notes for the animators, and they send that to their offsite studio outside of America, where they do on like classic on paper, they animate the sequences. Those get scanned into a computer, and then what comes after that is there's a cleanup process, and the coloring process happens there. So a lot of people assume that all of those processes together count as animation, whereas like the drawing practice of animation is like just a piece of that puzzle. That's my soapbox there.
It's not so much, I mean, like you can call it a soapbox, but I think that's just really interesting information as well. Like, not many people know what goes into it. So I didn't mean to discount, by the way, anybody's hard work or anything like that. I think animation does take work, and it's a beautiful art form as well on top of that. And it is an art form. I mean, you're doing art. But yeah, so I actually have no idea. Well, I can't begin to understand why industries make the decisions that they do. But everybody's still in the 2D and 3D game whatever works for them, I guess. And I'm just looking
a lot
through
of
my
it
notes here.
probably.
Yeah,
a lot
go
of
ahead.
it probably boils down to money. Would be my guess.
That's why I guessed that 2D was cheaper. That was the only reason, is because money seemed to be the motivation for everything.
Like I would say that 3D is probably more expensive, not necessarily for the animation side, but for the video processing and the rendering of the complex animations. It takes a lot of computer power when we're talking about a Disney like for making a Frozen, you need a lot of computer power to render all of that stuff well, and to have it with any efficiency be completed and ready by whatever their deadlines are.
For sure, yeah.
So I would say that that's probably there's also a lot of like internal development that happens with 3D. There's a lot of like proprietary softwares that Disney will develop, or DreamWorks will develop their own. You know, when you come to work at DreamWorks, you get your computer that has the DreamWorks stuff on it, and then you're going to use the DreamWorks stuff because they made it and they put a bunch of money into it.
The DreamWorks stuff, yes. Not of course into their spin-off of a spin-off Rescue Riders, where you can really tell when the hair is just one like Lego block on the character's head as opposed to having individual strands. You're like, yeah, they just farted this out. Anyway, I want to go through some of my notes really quickly because it's funny, but then I want to talk more about animation. One of the things that I wanted to say was not many kids movies include a sex slave, because that is absolutely what Sapporo was. I mean, like they talked around it, but that is absolutely what she was captured and presented to the prince for, and that's
exactly.
And she was brought up to Moses's bedroom as well. So that I mean, this movie didn't pull its punches in a lot of ways. Like at the very beginning, they had the Pharaoh's men standing over a crib or a cradle with their I don't know what that sword is called, the curved sword, but like, you know, the imagery on the wall of the babies being dropped into the Nile with the crocodiles, right? Like they did not exactly pull back on this one, which I can understand why Disney would be like, so that was interesting. Tzipporah, of course, played by famous Jewish actress Michelle Pfeiffer. I say with all the stank in the world because Tzipporah's name starts with tzaddik, okay? Like, it's so Hebrew, it's so Jewish. So in Hebrew, there are some characters that make sounds that obviously we don't have letters for, including the chet, which makes the ch sound, that begins things like Hanukkah, and the tzaddik makes the t sound, so it would be like TZ or TS kind of. And then they have two letters that don't make any sound at all, because in Hebrew, the vowels go underneath the consonants. And so sometimes if you need to start with a vowel sound, the only way you can do that is to have almost like a placeholder consonant there, so that you can put the vowel underneath it. So that was interesting to me, that there was a sex slave. And then this is the thing that I noticed on this rewatch, because I have seen this movie a lot, but as always, there's like always something you can notice from watching a lot that you won't necessarily catch the first few times. And that is the parallels between Moses and Tzipporah's first meeting and their second encounter. So in the first encounter, Moses is holding onto a rope, and he lets go of it, and Tzipporah falls into a fountain. And then when they next encounter each other, Tzipporah is holding onto a rope, and she lets go of it, and Moses falls into a well. So it is literally, in every possible way, revenge. Like, it is her getting her revenge on him for what he did. It is a complete parallel and reversal of the scene, which of course also shows the reversal of their power structure, because in the first part, you know, he has all the power as the prince and her as the captured sex slave, and in the second part, she has the power as the person who is in her home holding onto this rope, and he of course is this disgraced person who was wandering the desert. So it's a really beautiful flip there and parallel. I liked that.
Classic,
so I that before.
Very classic meet cute moment.
Yes. Well, I mean, Tzipporah is like one of the original badass motherfucker, like strong women characters in my memory. She didn't do a lot, but her confidence, and I mean like her
the take no shit attitude.
Yes.
Like, I don't care if the Pharaoh's here. I don't care if you're I don't care.
She was literally like, nobody owns me. She just yelled that. Like, and so her take no shit thing is like iconic to me, and I wish she hadn't been played by Michelle Pfeiffer, but Michelle Pfeiffer did fine, I guess. So I did notice that, so that was fun. I like noticing new things like that. Every time I want to tell someone about a dream in future, I'm going to say, last night the gods granted me a vision. because like what's his face, Ramsex, walks up and is like, last night the gods granted me a vision, and I'm like, Ramses, just say you had a dream.
You had a dream.
You had a dream, man. You're always making things so dramatic. This was something you said when we last watched it together, when Moses turns his staff into a cobra, which is an amazing scene. I love it. And then the Pharaoh asks his magicians / priests / jesters to do the same thing. And you said something like, these guys are just always carrying around snakes on the off chance that they have to like
Just
magic one up. So they just have snakes in their pockets, but not in the like sexual way. Yeah. That's not a euphemism. Like they really just have snakes in their pockets.
Literally. They have some snakes.
But that is part of the Old Testament story that they kind of gloss over, but you see the shadow of it. Maybe, I don't know why they would decide this of all things is too gruesome, considering, again, sex slave and dead babies, but
like
in
a bloody river.
Yeah,
everything.
exactly. In the actual story, Moses' staff snake consumes the 2 cobras that the priests make, according to my sister, who is probably more knowledgeable than I, as she is an actual historian who's like been in archaeological digs and stuff. I mean, she's not a historian, but she's good at history. And so they showed that like the shadow of it, of the snake, Moses' snake eating their snakes. And this is getting very sexual all of a sudden. So he has a staff that turns into a snake.
Yeah, I never thought about like why they made that decision in that musical number to hide the snakes
Getting eaten. Yeah.
getting eaten.
I don't know. It's weird. They never acknowledge it either. They're not like, oh, wow, your snake ate our snakes. You owe us new snakes, man.
What I do know about this movie is one thing that I find very interesting about this movie is the structure of the credits. Rather than it just listing, like, here's all the animators, it lists by what sections or what characters they worked on. So all of the musical numbers, they all specifically say, like, here's the director for this musical number. Here's the lead key animators. Here's all the
Instead of just grouping them all together by alphabetical order.
Exactly.
Which some movies do, but I have seen that. What did I see that in? I think Aladdin does it, if I'm remembering correctly. There are a couple Disney movies that do that, where they'll tell you which animators did what, and I think that's very nice of them to do.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that DreamWorks doing this is what pressured Disney to start doing stuff like that.
Yeah, fuck you again, Disney.
I think that was part of the way that Jeffrey Katzenberg was able to poach some of the Disney employees, was
giving them
dissatisfaction.
actual credit.
Yes, dissatisfaction with how Disney was crediting them in their movies.
All right,
and so
that makes sense.
So it's possible that it's just a direction choice that whoever was doing that particular section thought this works better, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, the shadow of it's just another possibility. Although snakes are known to unhinge their jaws and eat things that are bigger than them, perhaps they simply could not think of the logistics of how a snake would eat 2 other snakes that are basically the same size. And so the shadow kind of lets you just see the quick end of it and not really think about the beginning of it and how it like managed to fit 2 other snakes in his mouth. I could just imagine that snake going, hold on, oh god, oh. So like maybe they didn't want to animate it doing that. I just had to imagine I had 2 snakes in my mouth. Again, this is getting too sexual, so we have to move on. But I also laughed really hard at, like, this song is the only bad song, the comic relief character song, but just, I never really listened to the lyrics other than you're playing with the big boys now. But by the might of Horus, you will kneel before us.
Yes, it's very cheesy.
Yeah, they were probably so proud of that line too. They were like, "Wait, we figured out how to rhyme Horus with kneel before us," but it's just so bad. Anyway, Hebrew Nonsense is my band name. At some point, Ramses calls all this stuff Hebrew Nonsense, and I was like, "Oh, that's my band name." We sing nothing but ABBA covers though, which is weird. So I don't know where the Hebrew part comes from, but so Aaron is misrepresented. And so this is one thing that I don't think a lot of people know unless they're, they were just really into Sunday school or whatever. But in the actual story, when Moses was a baby, the Pharaoh, who was an asshole, didn't want this baby to rise up and overthrow him. And so he placed in front of Moses a hot coal and a lump of gold. And if the baby reached for the gold, it would symbolize that he wants power and he would be killed. And because gold is shiny, the baby reached for it, and God sent out an angel to push Moses' hand over to the hot coal. Why it had to be hot, I have no idea. And he picked that up instead, but then he put it in his mouth and burned his mouth so badly that he had a lisp for the rest of his life. I have no idea why he didn't drop it immediately upon touching hot coal. but the Bible isn't really known for its like
powerful angel influence.
Maybe the angel like put it in his mouth. It's just like, here, kid, take this. But, you know, like the Bible has one or two plot holes anyway. So, and the Old Testament is included in that. But so he had a lisp that was so bad that Aaron actually spoke for him when he went to go and get the Hebrews released. And so Aaron was not this like snide Jeff Goldblum, like Moses, you suck kind of dude. He was right there beside him in the story, but that's fine. Whatever.
That's interesting. I didn't actually know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So
you can't have Val Kilmer have a lisp.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, so the impact, I suppose, is taken away. If you're like, so this is our protagonist, but he can't really talk, and so somebody else is going to talk for him. I understand why they made that choice. It's just technically, fun fact, Moses had a really bad speech impediment, and Aaron helped speak for him. That brings me to the end of the notes that I took. We talked a little bit about Leviathan, so I want to go back to and then I want to hear if there's anything else you want to talk about with animation, but it was somebody online who pointed this out. But first of all, Leviathan is a Hebrew Jewish type concept. I don't know what it would be in Hebrew. I should say Jewish only, because Hebrew is the language and Jewish is the religion. But it started out as basically a gigantic eel monster. But Alan and I were looking it up earlier, and apparently it kind of has taken on the meaning of any big fuck-off sea monster is now a Leviathan. So that's why I call the big shark thing a Leviathan, although it's probably closer to the Meg than anything else. But yeah, so somebody online pointed out that there are no whales in the Red Sea or something like that, and they were confused by it until they looked closer at the image and realized it has a vertical tail.
Instead of the horizontal whale tail.
Instead of the horizontal whale tail, and it has that back fin, which dolphins do have dorsal fins, but I've not seen, and orcas do, but orcas aren't whales, they're dolphins. So I've not seen any whales that do. And so, and I posted this picture to Twitter already, and it's my new, it's Not Again's new Twitter cover photo, because it's such a gorgeous scene. But they pointed out that, nope, it's not a whale, it is a gigantic shark. And those Jews just walked past it like, what you gonna do? You know? But I suppose
at some
it's there
point,
to...
you witness like fire tornado and like the ocean parting, and then here comes the Pharaoh screaming and hollering. I think at some point you just kind of see the big shark and just keep on going.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think that the point was, obviously it intimidates the audience just as much as it intimidates the characters, and that's the point. But also, like, God's might. Look, he can, keep this sea parted, and not that there were giant sharks in the Red Sea either. But I think it's
God
more of
is displaying the technology of the future, the world's very first aquarium experience.
It was such a good aquarium experience. Yeah, no, I think it must have been a reference to biblical times and like kind of the sea monsters of mythology and religion and stuff like that, or some, whatever, because obviously they weren't asserting that there are gigantic fuck off sharks the size of whales in the Red Sea. But I still get chills when I see that scene. It's absolutely gorgeous. Him parting the Red Sea is a fantastic scene. Anything with water in this movie was really well done, especially the water turning to blood where he was standing it and it was just a clear patch of water just around him. That was awesome. And I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that. The Angel of Death I really like. Heather Sinclair and Martin say that it looks like a certain sexual bodily fluid, but I say it just looks awesome. It looks like if the wind came to life to me. And the fact that it like steals the breath away from these children, it like reinforces that it's kind of like a wind. I love that because of course like breath is like air as well. And that scene, that animation. Is that 3D as well? Is that computer done?
I have no idea. My guess, I haven't seen it since we last watched it.
Sure,
my guess is that part is two-dimensional. My guess is also that the water is the 2D, 3D hybrid. I don't know if the water of the river is, but I think that the water when he's like parting the Red Sea.
Oh yeah.
It's. I think that's the same kind of technique of a 3D model of this water, and then they draw on all the fun splash, foamy ocean stuff.
Oh, I see.
Top.
Okay. Yeah, that would definitely make sense. So, I mean, just overall, obviously we've run out of time, but we should watch Sinbad at some point. But I absolutely love the animation, the music. Again, I don't actually know the miracle song that they sing at the end. I forget what it's called, but It's like When You Believe or whatever they call it. I think it's the one that won an Oscar. But that one, like, even though I can't carry a tune in a bucket, I sing along with that one every time. It's so beautiful.
Yes. It's very good. I gotta say, Mariah Carey, for the credits, she kills it with that song. I love that.
This has surprisingly come up in this podcast before, and I don't know why. I would have to listen to our backlog, and I don't feel like it, but because I've edited every episode and then listened to it the next day when it released, and it's like, okay, I'm done now. But I couldn't name a Mariah Carey song if you paid me to. I know
Really?
she's a good singer,
I would
but
name this song. I would name this song, like, that would be the first one that comes to me.
calling
Whitney
this a
Houston
Mariah
too,
Carey song. Yeah.
Yes. To me, it is. It is complete. Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, and, like, to me, this is their song. Like, I listened to this song. My mom really liked this song, independent of the movie.
Yeah.
For like a long time in my childhood, and to me, it's just always been this is a Mariah Carey song and a Whitney Houston song. Duh. Even though it's not in the film.
Yeah, it's like Christina Aguilera singing that Reflection song for Mulan. You know, she I think that one was released on the radio even. Maybe. I don't even know. But yeah, I should listen to it probably. I didn't this time around because I just needed to take notes basically. And I was like, on a time schedule here. Because this was all very last minute. And even so, you came very prepared to talk about some really awesome stuff. So that's good. But I want to see if it is on The Prince of Egypt. Oh, yep. It's the very first thing on the soundtrack when you look it up on Apple Music is The Prince of Egypt, Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. Oh, it's called When You Believe, yeah.
Yes, When You Believe.
Yeah.
Love that. I also love the Boys to Men song that is in the credits as well.
Oh, yep, there is one. It's I Will Get There, Boys to Men. That's an interesting choice.
Yes. I always sit through the credits for this movie because
I should listen to that one.
I'm a nerd, and so every time I'm like bopping along.
No, it's fine. I'm glad that I looked this up actually because I wanted to say I sped past it so quickly in the beginning. The name of the voice actress for Yocheved is Ofra Hazah. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, by the way, but that is her. She is also the singing voice, and so she's on here. But and she does a great job. Again, I'm glad they cast an Israeli woman. I wish they'd had more of a focus on making the cast appropriate to the time period and subject matter and location. But well, I guess they couldn't do it with, the time period. What are they going to do? Go back in time? But you know what I mean. So go back in time, find some Jews. So yeah, and then Hans Zimmer did the music. That would make sense. That's why it's so fantastic. I make a point of trying to learn the names of composers besides John Williams and Danny Elfman because I feel like surprisingly they don't get a lot of acknowledgement the way that like pop singers do and singers the lyrics do. So maybe who sings a song but not who composed it. So I know Hans Zimmer. I know John Powell did How to Train Your Dragon. I'm going to say this wrong, but Bruno, I'm guessing it's French, so Bruno Coulet maybe does Coraline and The Secret of Kells. And then Hans Zimmer did, I'm pretty sure. No, don't quote me on this one.
I know that he worked on Kung Fu Panda.
Is that what I was remembering?
The second one. The second one for sure. I don't know about the first one, but I know that Hans Zimmer definitely worked on the second one.
Yeah. Well, he's also worked on a lot of Disney movies, I think. I mean, I don't know if that was another fuck you to Disney of like getting Hans Zimmer to do stuff, but no. But then there's Klaus Badelt. I can't say that one right either, but he did Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one at the very least, and I love that soundtrack. So yeah, Hans Zimmer worked on like The Lion King and stuff. So I didn't want to say it in case I was wrong, but he has worked on some Disney movies. So I don't know. I just try to remember their names. I really do need to see your Blu-ray behind the scenes, though. This part is not for the podcast. I just need to see that. I love behind the scenes. It's
great. They really showcase very well. You see the like, oh, here's the chariot, and it's just like there's no background, there's no characters, no horse. And that's the section that they did first. So you see this kind of this just funky shape moving in 3D space, and you see as they add these layers of like, and here's the characters and the horses, and then here's the background painting that they did, and so you kind of watch it come to life in a way.
No, I love it. So, thank you for listening. If you have listened to this far, if we haven't offended you greatly in every way, shape, and form. Adele stuff was really cool, at least. I probably am going to get burned at the stake. But thank you for listening. Thank you for existing. Thank you for helping us to maintain our marbles a little late this week. Couple things real quick, since the usual support sites. I wanted to clarify one thing because support sites get confusing. We have a new patron, first of all, which is awesome, but I don't want to linger on that. I kind of wanted to announce it with Alan, I guess, but he's not here. So in Alan's memory and honor, in his memory, he's not dead.
His memory. R.I.P.
R.I.P. Alan. In Alan's honor, thank you to our new patron. Welcome. You can message us anytime if there's some kids movie or show you want us to go over. We're happy to do it and work it into our schedule. Support sites, real quick. Patreon is a combination for me, Potato Lady Podcast Reviews, and this podcast, Not Again. It's kind of like you want to support one or the other or both, Patreon. Do you want to support just Not Again because you don't like me? I understand. It's totally fine. We are on Ko-fi. It's ko-fi.com/notagain. That's our singular support site. Similarly, if you hate this podcast, why are you listening to it? I don't understand why you're listening this far, but thank you, I guess, for listening to something you hate. My support site, my exclusive support site, is the Buy Me a Coffee page. So there's one that's combined with me and Not Again. There's one that's just for Not Again. There's one just for me. And so that's Buy Me a Coffee. Those are all linked below, probably. Whatever. What do I know? Speaking of which, I've forgotten to ask this for 31 episodes, but if you could rate and or review us, that'd be awesome. 5 stars if you're feeling generous. Nah, I mean, yeah, subscribe, sorry. But yeah, so if you could give us a rating, that's awesome or whatever. We, again, never really thought anyone would listen to this, but now we have some ratings and... So yeah, I feel like I should ask. Anyway, the only thing I'm going to promote right now is I am trying some Twitch streaming. As you may have heard, if I didn't cut it out earlier, I have a Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/PotatoLadyBex, all one word. I mean, no hyphens or anything like that. And I don't do video games, although maybe one day I will, I don't know. One day I'll play Resident Evil 4, maybe. But I do write, and so I thought it'd be cool if I could stream the creative process. And so right now I'm editing Hellbound and writing a prologue for Hellbound. And so if you ever want to follow me and pop in for a stream, the idea is that you can talk to me, you can just watch me write, you can lurk in the background, you can ask me questions, or, and I would love this, you could bring your own creative project or a school assignment if you have an essay to write and just kind of work in parallel with me. We can do kind of a creative sesh. That's pretty cool. So again, that'll be linked below, but it's twitch.tv/PotatoLadyBex. And I'd love to see you there. So with that being said, Adele, thank you so much for coming back and talking to me and for
welcome.
Bringing that animation knowledge. Very fun.
No problem.
And we will probably see you again. I mean, we can't keep you away from this podcast. You have so much fun stuff to say. We'll bring Alan back next week for our surprise subject. He doesn't even know what we're talking about. I've been bursting at the seams to tell him too, because I have some fun stuff planned. And I'm very bad at keeping secrets when I'm excited, but I am keeping this secret. So we will see you next week for something.
Can you whisper the secret to me right now?
Yeah, I'll whisper it to you as soon as we press stop on the record.
Rats.
Yes. So, with that being said, until next week, I am Rebecca, and my guest has been
Adele.
Thank you so much. We will talk to you next time. Bye, friends.
Bye, y'all.
God can be his own son if he wants to.
There's definitely a level of I don't know, God does whatever he wants to do. And as long as we capitalize the H and he, you get the idea.